Alistair Stevens.
I'm Elizabeth Ray.
And Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise. So here we are at the end of all things, a little more delayed than we expected.
Yeah,
as the
thanks,
listener
COVID.
can probably hear. I am still struggling a little in the aftermath of COVID. You've recovered beautifully.
Thank you.
Your pipes are as mellifluous as ever. How are you feeling? COVID kind of knocked us out for about 10 days each.
Yeah. I'm feeling mostly better. My fatigue is finally better, which is great because I, of course, have a job where I run around a lot, so I need to not be so fatigued. The brain fog is still real, though. That part sucks. Yeah.
Excellent, because over the course of the next, 45 minutes or whatever, we're going to spend a lot of time remembering the last year, which is going to be challenging at the best of times.
But
honestly.
You know what? It's not things from the last year that I'm struggling with. It's like what I'm doing moment to moment. Like as a bartender, I'll be building a drink in the shaking tin, and I'll just all of a sudden have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Just like, wait, what's already in here? What drink am I making? What have I done already? It's really weird and terrible.
Well, now you just get to relax. Nobody's expecting consistency from one moment to the next here on The Last Star in Hollywood.
That's good.
And I'm running the show, so you're going to be just fine. Really nothing to worry about. We wanted to talk a little bit about this, I guess, not an end of The Last Star in Hollywood, but rather the beginning of an extended hiatus. A hiatus that's at least going to carry us through to May of next year and the release of Tom Cruise's next movie.
Wow.
But we wanted to kind of wrap up the first year of this project, the first 44 films in Tom Cruise's
That's right. It's been
filmography.
almost exactly a year,
Almost
right? 'Cause
exactly
it was October for sure.
Year, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, we did 44 episodes in almost exactly a year. So in a world riddled with COVID, that seems pretty fine.
I think that we
with
did
our
great.
schedules, that's not bad, I feel like. Plus a bunch of bonus episodes. And I suppose I have to start with this question. How do you feel about Tom Cruise here on the other side of The Last Star in Hollywood?
You know, I think that as a actor and performer, I respect him more than I did as a craftsperson, I suppose. And yeah, I'm more weirded out by the Scientology of it all now, I have to say. Yeah, it's really too bad.
Break down a little for me, if you could, what has changed in your appreciation of him as an actor. How do you feel that needle has moved?
I mean, I always knew, Tom Cruise, he does his own stunts. But to really look at it and see just how quite extraordinary it is, and all the pilot's licenses and things like that, it's really quite cool. It's just kind of baller. So I just respect it. I don't know.
So that's the movie star pillar of his career, or I guess
it's not even that.
stunt
it's
performer pillar of his career, really, right? Yeah.
Well, but it speaks to, I think, a personality type too. That's just someone who is adventurous, and someone who's a completionist, and someone who is just determined to do the thing properly. And that's just cool. That's just something that I admire.
Yeah, I think there's a degree of, I don't know, compulsion there that maybe you don't have to become a world expert on every single facet of every single production. I'm left, after this year of studying him, with the sense that Tom Cruise has a definitive hollowness, and that is a thing that I find potentially very sad. I think I said this in episode 3, so I figured this out early in our run here. But Tom Cruise is a very sad figure, right?
Yeah,
you just look at his upbringing, you look at what gets him into movies in the first place, you look at that first arc through to, risky business, really.
Yeah.
And I see a figure who is constantly chasing a kind of validation and safety that is hard to come by anyway, and is particularly hard to come by in the movie industry, in an industry as predatory and rapacious as the movie industry. And I see that extending into this modern, Macquarie era of his career, where he is in some ways playing it very safe. We're going to talk a little about the 5 movies that are currently slated for production and pre-production.
Which I'm so interested in, because I don't think I know. I mean, obviously there's going to be another Mission Impossible, but besides that, I don't think I know about any of them.
Yeah, it's an interesting spread of films. And
there's an Inarritu film.
Yes,
right.
Inarritu, yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking a little about that. That's the most interesting one, and that's the Oscar play. That's really what's next. But there's also a couple of other things happening out there. I wanted to talk a little about your experiences recording the show. Have you had a good time? This isn't really a format that you're very comfortable with, or a format that you really like, right? This
What,
isn't
what do
your
you mean?
favorite. This kind of deep dive, kind of very pedantic, beat by beat. It's kind of less improvisational. It's less conversational. It's a little more structured.
That
It's a
is
little more
true.
academic and
It
comprehensive.
is. It is. Yeah. I've enjoyed it very much, though. Like we sat down today, and it's been however long since we recorded, and I said, "This feels good. This feels
Yeah,
right."
yeah.
You know. So that part I really enjoy, and just getting back behind the mic with you, and just the way that it kind of, I don't know, elevates our personalities a little bit. Like it kind of turns up the
It sure
volume on
does.
our
Yeah.
personalities, which is nice because it kind of just pulls us out of, I don't know, just the quotidian.
Right?
It
That's
does.
exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really enjoy that. And I'm so looking forward to starting the Before Trilogy podcast.
Yeah.
I'm really ready for that.
Just to plug that, we were hoping that we
Yeah.
would have a feed available for it already. We don't because of that aforementioned COVID,
Exactly.
but it
That really
is
threw us
coming
off.
very soon, really within the next 10 days, the next 7 to 10
I sure
days.
hope
I'm
so.
expecting there to be a feed available and a first episode available. This, if you're new to The Last Star in Hollywood, hi, this is a weird first episode for you. I hope you're having fun. But if you're joining us at this point, or if you haven't heard us mention it before, we're about to launch a podcast looking in depth at Richard Linklater's Before trilogy, Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, Before Midnight. Those films are fantastic.
Yeah.
Extremely personally important to us. Extremely critically and academically important to us too. They're not just our favorite films, they are also, I think, some of the best films that we've ever spent time thinking about and looking at objectively and critically, as well as personally. And we're going to spend, I don't know, 25, 26 weeks looking in a great deal of depth at those films. So that's going to be a ton of fun. Those episodes are going to be a lot shorter because these episodes have run long. The episodes of The Last Star in Hollywood have tended toward
It's
the
the
long.
beat by beats. That's the thing I don't like, I think. Of everything that I've learned, it's like I don't like doing the beat by beat.
You don't like moving through the plot like that and finding things to say about every point of incident.
Right.
It's, it's just, it's the wrong level of detail, I think. It's either too much detail to be somewhat superficial and to paint in broad strokes, but not enough detail to really get into the weeds without feeling like you're being extremely pedantic. So it's a tough one, but we're not doing that level of depth with the Before trilogy. It's going to be much more depth, but really it's an opportunity to take the events of the film, which is the events of the films, in fact, which are very vignette-y, right? They're a series of really constrained and focused sequences, to take each one of those sequences in turn and use that as a jumping off point to discuss the world and life and philosophy and politics and our own experiences of romance and of falling in love and of being challenged by relationships and all of that good stuff. And of course, the art of filmmaking, which is so rich in the works of Richard Linklater in general, but particularly, I think, in the Before trilogy. So really looking forward to that. That show will be called Don't You Know Me By Now? And will be available very soon. We'll probably drop, if not just the trailer, then maybe even the first episode right here in the Last Star in Hollywood feed.
Smart idea.
So that you can keep track with that. And of course, we'll be back with the Last Star in Hollywood next year when Tom Cruise starts releasing movies again, which I'm honestly really looking forward to. I think I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to get some new material and to see how his career moves on from what was, I think, a point of stagnation, almost a series of successive safety plays right there at the end, as he's doubling down on Mission Impossible, as he's coming back with Maverick, which are movies that I like, but are not really interesting, which are not really as rich as I would like them to be, or as, I guess it's when I'm talking about the pillars of Cruise's career, when we're talking about the performer pillar and the movie star pillar and the actor pillar. Yeah. It's the actor pillar that I want to see developed more as we move forward.
Sure. Yeah.
I've been really struck by what a great actor Tom Cruise
really
is and remains, and how underutilized he is as a player in Hollywood. And I'd really like, and this is where the Inarritu film really excites me. Because quite frankly, he deserves an Oscar. He should have an Oscar. He's good enough to have an Oscar, and he just needs the right project. And that's what this is. We're going to talk a little about that as we move forward. I was talking about the length of the podcast. We've done almost 100 hours of The Last Star in Hollywood. I was astonished to discover that we have only gone over 2 hours twice.
Oh.
Do you have any idea which episodes ran for longer than 2 hours in the
you'll
run
have to
of The
tell
Last Star in
me.
Hollywood? Weirdly, it's Legend and Top Gun. Back-to-back episodes.
Wow.
Episodes 7 and 8 in November of last year. Both ran more than 2 hours.
Okay.
Both
All right.
great episodes. Really near the top of my personal list. I think the Top Gun episode is maybe not to anticipate a segment that we're going to have later in this week's episode, but Top Gun is maybe my favorite episode that we did in the run, I think.
Interesting. I think Legend might be mine, so go figure. But that would make sense. Like if we just had more and more and more to say, as opposed to just like trying to get through the beat by beat and get out of there. Yeah.
Exactly. Let's take a look at the real product of this podcast project, which is, of course, the list. An inarguable document here. 44 films arrayed in their perfect and comprehensive and inarguable order. It's a crazy list.
It is a crazy list.
I don't love the list that we've created here. It seems wild. What I find most interesting about it is that the top 4 movies are all from different decades.
Oh.
And that I think really does inadvertently stand as testament to the work that Tom Cruise has done. We've got Jerry Maguire from 1996, Top Gun from 86, Mission Impossible Fallout from 2018, and Top Gun Maverick from 2022. Though you have to run all the way down to number 10 there to find a film from the 2000s. You have to go all the way to The Last Samurai at number 10. And I did some work breaking down the decade by decade progression of his career and kind of valuing the movies contained therein. His best decade, according to our list, is the 2020s, which doesn't really count because he's only released 2 movies in the 2020s. Maverick at 4 and Dead Reckoning at 17 on our list. But that average is 10.5, which makes the 2020s categorically the most successful decade of his career. The second best decade of his career is the 90s.
Yeah.
9 movies with an average rank of 17, though Days of Thunder and Far and Away really drag down the average in his 90s output. Third best decade was the 2010s. He did 11 movies in the 2010s with an average of 18 on our list, from the highs of Fallout at 3 to the lows of Rock of Ages at 35. Fourth best decade is the 2000s with 10 movies and an average rank of 24, from the aforementioned Last Samurai at 10 all the way down to Tropic Thunder, really pinning the bottom of the list at 42. And that means that his worst decade, as far as our big list is concerned, is the 1980s, with 12 movies and an average rank of 32, despite Top Gun being number 2 on the list. His 80s output is just not good. With the exception of Tropic Thunder, the bottom 5 movies on our list are all from the 80s.
Yeah.
Those early movies. This
doesn't really surprise me. Most 80s movies, I think, don't hold up very well, though, I would say.
They really don't. Like, I can go back and I can look at this list and I can see some outliers. I can see some things that I feel ought to be higher. I can see some things that I feel ought to be lower. Just through gut instinct, I kind of feel, All the Right Moves should probably be a little higher on the list. But I have to sit and think and remember, like, how dismissive that film is of its female characters before I remember why it is where it is on the list. But Taps is very bad. Endless Love is rankly offensive, and losing it is a goddamn disaster.
Yeah. I still love that opening. The first act of Endless Love was so interesting and good, and then it just went nuts.
I often think of the scene on the Overlook looking down at the cantina in Losing It, and remember what a great scene that is.
Good, and everything else in the movie is so terrible.
So terrible.
Yeah.
What else stands out to you on the list? Is there anything that seems to be intuitively in the wrong place? Are you generally pretty happy with it? Are you generally happy with what it says about our take on Cruise's career?
I'm always kind of surprised that I dropped Color of Money so far down.
The Color of Money at 37, I think, is just wrong.
I get it. Yeah. And I'm sorry. That's on me.
Is The Color of Money really worse than Cocktail? Because I now feel...
like it less, but that's different.
Well, then, see, you're happy with where it is on the list then.
Well, no. For me personally, I understand where it's there, but as far as a definitive list that I hand to people, I'm like, oh, this is super hella biased. I just didn't like this one,
I think the validity of this list is called into question. If we handed this to someone who hadn't heard our podcast and they saw that Risky Business was one step lower than Jack Reacher Never Go Back, I don't think they take this list seriously. But you know what? That in particular, I'm going to defend. That in particular, I'm going to stand by. Yeah, The Color of Money really stands out to me. The other one is Eyes Wide Shut at 28, kind of, the lower middle of the list. Which
under Far and Away. That seems crazy.
Yeah. For all that I don't think that Eyes Wide Shut is a good film, which is why that's where it is on the list.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting film, and I spent a lot of time thinking about that one, even today. But overall, you're happy with this list?
Overall, yeah.
If there was anything that you could just move to a brand new spot, is there anything that you would, any change that you would make, just a editorial fiat now? Would you move Interview with the Vampire up to like number 6 on the list?
I don't know. It would take too much thought. So probably
Sure.
no. Probably I'm just going to let it go and just trust my gut at the time.
You're just not a girl who lives in the past.
I'm not.
You're a girl who lives in the present.
I am a present and forward-looking person.
The present is a gift. And I have a gift for you right here on this secret episode of The Last Hour in Hollywood. Because there's a Tom Cruise film that we haven't ranked. And we have to. So if you want to grab your earbuds right there.
What?
We're going to watch. Obviously, as the listener at home can tell, you did not know that this was coming.
I did not know this was coming. Okay, grabbing
you
my
can
earbuds.
grab your earbuds. They should hopefully sync with your iPad. And if you want to grab your iPad, you will find, if you do the little double tap on the home button there, that I have secretly placed a file on your iPad that you can now open and start playing when I count down from 3.
Okay.
And you can see the secret Tom Cruise film that you haven't watched before. Are you ready for this?
Okay.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1, play. So here we are, somewhere in Utah.
Somewhere in Utah.
You just
Very
call this
canyony.
out. What does it look like to you right now?
Yeah, here's a helicopter. This looks like MI2.
Kind of attack,
This-
right?
Yeah.
Doesn't it immediately kind of have that? Obviously it's the free climbing at the beginning of John Woo's
Absolutely,
Mission
yeah.
Impossible 2. I'll be able to
Sure.
date this for you.
and
just
here's okay. Here's Austin Powers.
some distinctive
I'd
costuming
forgotten about
happening
this.
right there. Yeah, this is the cameo sequence in Austin Powers Goldmember, the third Austin Powers movie from 2002. This comes right between Minority Report and The Last Samurai for Tom Cruise.
No,
Which is a weird part of his
that is-
career,
That is
honestly.
a weird spot for this to be.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's right here in the beginning. That's fun.
Yeah. And
I mean,
you'll see
it's
the rest of the cast. Do
beautifully
you have
shot. Look at this.
any
This looks
idea
great.
who's in the rest of the cast for this little short?
Oh God.
There were some
This is a
very nice
short? This
surprises
isn't-
and a very terrible. This is ostensibly a trailer for the Austin Powers film within the film.
Oh.
We're not supposed
See,
to
I haven't
necessarily
seen this.
identify that
Yeah.
this is not Austin. Are you an Austin Powers fan?
No, not at all. No, it's
That is
yeah.
perhaps the least surprising thing
I
you've ever
saw
said on
it-
the podcast.
I saw the first one, I think, at a sleepover in like, I don't know, 9th grade or
Sure.
something. And I was just like, ugh, gross.
These
So-
explosions are also looking very John Woo.
Yeah, definitely.
Which was, 2 years prior, right? 2000 is Mission Impossible 2.
Must have been, sure.
It's a pretty great car, all
I
things
mean, it-
considered.
Yeah, here is a showdown with a helicopter in the car
Yep.
flying. Oh, yeah, sure.
Kind of doing Roger Moore level stunts with a John Woo aesthetic.
It's ridiculous. Very John Woo. Yes, with the explosion.
The action, though, is
And the
not
crazy
why
flip.
we are here. I guess, the rest of the cameos are why we're here.
Boots. That's interesting. Yes. And there he is.
Kind of looking the part. Like he's kind of giving a performance, right?
Sure. Oh, how gross. I don't like it.
Well, really, then we're just here for the, as I say, the other starring roles with a
Okay.
minute left.
And
in
this is going to be
little short.
some.
You have
great
no
hot
idea who
actress.
this is? This is so fun then.
Oh my God. Gwyneth Paltrow?
Gwyneth Paltrow looking properly hot.
Dixie Normus.
Sure. Right? And then, it was 2002, so something bad is about to happen on your screen, and I apologize for that. But the
Okay.
payoff right at the end of this is, I think, worth it. This is the thing about Cruise, though, right? This is a proper little
Yeah.
performance.
It is. I'm surprised he's not doing a British accent.
I like that as the conceit, as the
Like
setup.
even with.
Yeah. Also, that is among the hotter kisses that Tom Cruise has ever had on screen.
And Kevin
You're
Spacey.
really making a
Sure.
face. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Kevin Spacey
I
as
just
Dr.
wasn't
Evil
expecting
is.
him. But of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the cut
Dr.
to
Evil, though.
the cut to Mini-Me is worth it. If you had all the actors in the world, Danny DeVito, hopefully getting a paycheck
I sure hope
for
so.
appearing right there. So that's
Austin
the
Pussy,
that's the
sure.
great lost Tom Cruise performance. Again,
Wow.
if we're not counting the cameo in Young Guns 2 or wherever it was that he showed up.
I can see it.
And that's
Weird.
the beginning
Cute.
of Austin Powers Goldmember. Obviously, we're not going to be watching the rest of that film or indeed any other Austin Powers movies. Mike Myers continually threatens to come back and make a fourth Austin Powers.
That does sound like a threat.
I think that there's maybe something there. I think there's maybe something you can do when you are the age of Roger Moore. So we could obey the formality and add that to the big list too. But I kind of like Jerry Maguire at number 1, and I'm not sure that we want to upset that right now. Let's talk a little about the movies that are coming for Tom Cruise.
Yeah,
5
please.
movies, as I say, that are currently in various stages of, production, pre-production, or someone had a dream about them once,
Yeah.
which is surprisingly common in Hollywood. Obviously, the one that we have to talk about is Mission Impossible 8. That's the only one that has a real date, that has like a
Okay.
real production happening. Mission Impossible 8, which is still currently untitled, slated for release on May 23rd of 2025. This was, of course, originally the second part of Dead Reckoning. It has gone back for extensive reshoots. It has been retooled. It has been reworked. Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise are now talking publicly about how, we never said this was going to be the last one. No, you shouldn't assume that Ethan Hunt is going to die at the end of this movie just because that's obviously what we originally intended.
Yeah.
And he might not, is the thing, because No Time to Die kind of stole their thunder as far as killing the protagonist of your spy franchise at the end of his latest movie goes. So
this one will have Haley Atwell again?
Everybody's back.
Good.
It's literally just a continuation.
Except for Rebecca Ferguson, who died,
Dead
I guess.
Reckoning. Rebecca Ferguson is in the cast of this film. I don't know how much time we're going to spend on going back into Elsa. We know for sure that we're flashing back to the girl that Ethan originally lost, which motivated his entire character arc and is completely unnecessary because we all saw Mission Impossible 1.
Where he lost his whole team, but
okay. We'll get there. It's going to be fine. According to Simon Pegg and to Pomme Clementif, they are wrapped in principal photography, but they are not allowed to talk about it publicly. They apparently have extremely restrictive NDAs on them for this production, which is interesting given that it's the middle of October and this film is coming out in the middle of May. And we don't even have a title yet.
Yeah,
I would expect to see some really splashy trailers over the holidays this year.
Definitely.
And
You're right.
maybe even the Super Bowl. Maybe that's what we're waiting for, is maybe we're going to try and do a compressed run up to the release of this film. The other movies in Cruise's slate are connected in part to his partnership with Warner Brothers that he signed in January of this year.
Right.
Mission Impossible is Paramount, of course.
He's been the highest profile.
The highest profile of these, and the reason that Warner Brothers wanted him, is the rumored Edge of Tomorrow sequel. There is no paper trail to prove that film is in any stage of development whatsoever. Emily Blunt keeps being asked about it and keeps saying, I'd love to. Someday would be great. Tom's really busy. I'd love to. But there's no script. There's no production. There's no director attached. There's nothing. My guess is we are never going to see an Edge of Tomorrow sequel film.
Yeah.
There is a TV thing in development that's just set in the same world, but that is also very thin. It's a very flimsy bit of pre-production. I'm just not sure that there's much story there.
Yes.
There's a reason that even at the height of Bill Murray's popularity, we never did a Groundhog Day 2. I think that's maybe just how far those stories can run. We are pretty sure that there are 2 real movies actually in pre-production now, though. Cruise and McQuarrie, that guy again, are planning on remaking Clint Eastwood's 1977 movie The Gauntlet. This is going to be an R-rated film.
Gauntlet.
It features an alcoholic cop assigned to escort a witness from Las Vegas to Phoenix so that she can testify against the mob, and falling in love with her along the way.
Weird.
The rumored star, of the co-star, the leading lady of that film is Scarlett Johansson.
Nope, don't like it.
I think that might be really interesting because part of the DNA of that film is that this is an inappropriate relationship.
Okay, all right.
And Scarlett Johansson has proved herself capable in Lost in Translation, most notably, of kind of at least bringing something interesting to that dynamic. And this could be interesting.
Okay.
I don't know that there's much in Cruise's recent output or in McQuarrie's output as a whole that makes me think they can do a grimy, gritty, nasty little R-rated thriller. But if they could, I'm such a fan of Cruise just doing more different work.
Yeah, that's true.
That at least sounds pretty interesting. Are you here for that one?
I don't know. Maybe. Jury's out.
Real hesitant.
Yeah.
Okay. The other pre-production movie is the long-awaited, long-rumored Tom Cruise actually goes to space movie.
Oh,
which is ostensibly
like
going to be
real space.
Actual real space.
Right.
Yeah. It's going to be produced by Universal in partnership with SpaceX, a company which is full of extremely smart and principled and good people, which is incidentally owned by a fatuous disaster of a human being.
Okay.
But SpaceX, besides the Musk of it all, is actually a really interesting company and is still capable of doing really fascinating things. So this movie, which features Cruise as a, quote, down on his luck guy who finds himself in the position of being the only person who could save Earth.
Sure. Sounds like a Tom Cruise movie.
Familiar,
yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
It's slated to be directed by Doug Liman, who gave us
Yes.
Edge of Tomorrow and American Made, so is
Right.
really
That's
kind
great.
of up there in terms of my favorite Cruise directors. According to Lyman, in August of this year, the movie is going ahead. It will actually shoot in space for real, including on the International Space Station.
Wow.
It doesn't look as though there's a window for principal photography until 2026.
This has to be like one of the most expensive movies ever made.
Universal is apparently throwing $300 million at it, which is like a
Shit.
James Cameron Avatar amount
Yeah.
of money. But they're going to actual space.
Yeah.
So you can only think that it would be a marketing coup for NASA and for SpaceX
Sure,
too.
true.
I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
I think it's the performance aspect of Tom Cruise, again, which I'm slightly less interested in than I am in him doing a weird I'm crossing the desert with Scarlett Johansson and we're going to fall in love awkwardly. I know which one of those two movies I would rather see. But if someone's going to make a movie in space, it really should be Tom Cruise, right?
Yeah. How odd. Okay.
We'll also footnote here that Paramount is in active development on Maverick 2, Top Gun 3, whatever that thing is going to be called.
Yeah.
Although it looks as though their focus is, understandably so, on Glenn Powell now, rather than either Miles Teller or Tom Cruise.
Miles Teller was such a travesty.
So we are. I don't
That's great.
know
Okay.
what role Cruise would have in that film. It seems unlikely that he would go back to the Top Gun well for another leading role, but given his friendship with Glenn Powell, I could absolutely see him coming back for a supporting role.
Yeah,
He'd be conspicuous in his absence if he wasn't in that film, right?
You need him, I think, as like the Scarrett role, as the Viper role.
From the first film.
one.
Yeah. Or the John Hamm role from
or John. Yeah, something. He's got to be at least around.
I can only guess that movie will eventually come out and will be rebranded, Top Gun Hangman. And we'll just focus on Glenn Powell, and that'll be it. And maybe we can just continue making those for years and years and years to come.
Sure,
with that
I'm
very
sure Glenn Powell would
rich
love that.
and memorable supporting cast through that whole. Just so many people, so many actors, all of whom I remember and could recognize on screen. Greg Tarzan Davis, I suppose, is the only other one.
We liked him.
Who might continue to pop, but it's a little thin otherwise.
That's true.
And that only leaves the aforementioned Inarritu movie, which is a likely play, as I say, for Tom Cruise's long-awaited Best Actor Oscar. Inarritu won the Academy Award for Babel in 2006, for Birdman in 2014, for The Revenant in 2015. This would be his first English language movie since 2015.
I have to say, I haven't seen any of those. Have you?
Oh, interesting. Babel, and I saw a bit of Birdman and was immediately turned off by it. But more at like a conceptual level. That is just I don't need that. Thanks. And there's, God knows, nothing about The Revenant that could entice me to watch that film.
Yeah.
Literally nothing. But he's an interesting director. He's got a real perspective. The Academy loves him.
Okay.
And this has an interesting supporting cast. John Goodman, Jesse Plemons, Sandra Hüller, and Riz Ahmed have all signed on for that film. The logline is apparently, quote, "The most powerful man in the world embarks on a frantic mission to prove he is humanity's savior before the disaster that he's unleashed destroys everything."
Also sounds like Cruise. Yeah.
But sounds like Cruise in his Magnolia kind of way. I'm really interested in that.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that there will be a huge campaign. This is going to be Cruise at Cannes. This is going to be Cruise at Venice. We're going to see him really, I think, pushing for that Academy Award, which if he doesn't win for this, he's a couple of years away from getting some kind of Lifetime achievement, outstanding contribution, Academy special recognition. He'll get one of those awards that they give to people who should have won an award earlier in their career. But one of those people for whom it's weird that they don't have statutory, so that's what will inevitably happen. I guarantee that we will see Cruise with an Academy Award of some sort within the next 5 years. It's only really a question of whether he's going to win it for a particular movie or it's just going to be in recognition of his body of work. Is there a particular standout performance that you would like to have seen him credited for? Is there any? Do you think that the Academy has overlooked something that Cruise did early in his career that really deserved recognition? Do you think he should have won for Rain Man, for which he was nominated, for example?
I don't remember who he was up against. Wasn't he up against other films that were like, no, it's right that he didn't get it? That was my memory, is that he just was always in years where there were other performances that were just more demanding, more special.
You know what's happened here is that my memory has done me dirty. My memory has failed me here at the
Oh.
end of The Last Star in Hollywood because, of course, he wasn't nominated.
He wasn't for Rain Man, right?
Rain Man did get nominated for 8 awards that year, the most
Yeah.
at the 61st Academy Awards. It won 4, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor for Dustin Hoffman. And Cruise did not get recognized by the Academy that year, not even with a nomination.
So that's yucky. Yeah.
So that's a real standout to me because that
Yeah.
does still, to me, I don't love that film, but I don't think that Hoffman is doing what Hoffman is doing in that film without Cruise standing right next to him, really doing the much less showy performance, but a performance that is just as difficult, I think.
Yeah, they're lovely together.
Yeah. Cruise has actually been nominated 3 times. He's been nominated for Best Actor for Born on the 4th of July.
Sure.
Which can absolutely not be given any awards. What a terrible, pompous, crap-ass film. Jerry Maguire, which is an atypical Cruise performance. I'm not sure that should be the one for which he should receive an award, even though I love that performance.
I love that performance. Yeah. I'm glad he was nominated.
And then Best Supporting Actor for Magnolia, which is really good.
Yeah.
But maybe also he's kind of just getting some like PTA credibility for that one rather than, I don't know, maybe Collateral, his villainous turn in Michael Mann's Collateral.
I also thought he was really magnificent in Vanilla Sky. It was just not a movie that was ever going to get Academy Awards.
Not at that point, not in Cameron Crowe's career. No, I think that we've already crossed the Rubicon as far as that goes. Yeah,
but his performance there was really great.
No, I really like that one too. I'm looking forward to him receiving an award and being kind of recognized for, if nothing else, his role as like ambassador for Hollywood. I think that he has done a lot of legitimately good. Okay, so you have to buy into the assertion that the movie industry should exist, that it is fundamentally a force for good, and that it should exist, particularly the theatrical side of the movie industry. If you accept that is a good thing and should exist, then Tom Cruise, I think, deserves real recognition for campaigning for the continuation of the theater experience, particularly with Maverick and Fallout.
Definitely.
Well, Fallout to a degree, but particularly with Maverick and Dead Reckoning. Yeah. Let's wrap up this show then with some superlative awards. We wanted to give some recognition. Since he hasn't won an Oscar, he can win the almost as good award, the Tommy. We're going to give out some Tommies right here on The Last Star in Hollywood. And our first award goes to Most Tom Cruise Performance. Elizabeth, what do you think is the most Tom Cruise performance in his filmography? What is the definitive Cruise appearance on screen?
Definitive Cruise has to be the Top Guns, Top Gun and Maverick. It just has to be.
I don't think there's any argument against that. I think that, he's obviously recognized for Ethan Hunt. He's recognized for so much.
Sure.
But it is Top Gun that makes him a star, and it is Top Gun that cements his star status when he returns in Maverick. And Pete Maverick Mitchell is
that's the one.
Tom Cruise performance. Yeah. What is the least Tom Cruise performance? What is the most atypical? And I suppose here we can, to some extent, sidestep the Tropic Thunder of it all. We can kind of get away a little bit from that.
I think it has to be Born on the 4th of July, right? That one's
Born on the 4th of July is really interesting.
I think that's the one for me.
I don't know. Born on the 4th of July kind of sits alongside A Few Good Men and Days of Thunder. That kind of 90s period where he's really leaning into his power as an American icon.
Yeah.
And his ability to like reflect on that. I think, I just mentioned Collateral. I think his villain turn in Collateral is really interesting. I think his villain turn in Magnolia is really interesting, though that's also really playing off what we know about Tom Cruise in just the same way that Stacey Jackson, Rock of Ages, is kind of playing off what we all secretly think Tom Cruise is like a little bit. So I can see Born on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
I would probably go for Magnolia. I think that's maybe the most interesting, but and certainly, the least cruisy. I like what Mann does with Cruise. I would have loved it if they could have worked together again, and perhaps they still may. Who gets our award for Best Leading Lady? Of all the many women who have been paired with Tom Cruise through the years, with whom he has had almost no sexual chemistry.
It's got to be Renee Zellweger for Maguire, right? Jerry Maguire?
I mean, it's hard.
She's so
If you're making a list, she has to be on that list.
And they're
really
lovely together.
Like Rebecca Ferguson. I think that she works.
Rebecca Ferguson's great too.
I would absolutely want to recognize Emily Blunt for Edge of Tomorrow. I think she's terrific and really brings out something really good from him, something really interesting from him. I like this late era of Cruise where he is pairing himself with incredibly capable women.
Yes.
I like that a lot. I would call out Leah Thompson. I would call out All the Right Moves.
Oh,
Because I think
sure.
she's so good. Like, the reason that movie's so low on our list is that
Yeah.
she's so good in it and is
And
completely
then,
wasted,
yeah,
which just
true.
sucks, unfortunately. But
Hmm.
yeah, I would say Zellweger or Emily Blunt. I
Yeah.
think we can give
I think those are the
two
two.
awards right there. What is your favorite episode of The Last Star in Hollywood? You mentioned earlier Legend.
I think
Is
it
that
is
the one that stands
Legend.
out?
I think that's the one that stands
Yeah.
out for me. I loved learning all of the background information on Legend, so I'm just so glad that we did that one. I really enjoyed talking about it with you. That's the one for me.
Yeah,
It's the
Legend
standout.
really
Yeah.
stands out for me, and Top Gun. I think that
Yeah.
back to back is probably the most fun that I had recording this entire podcast. It's a shame that was a year ago. But that was a ton of fun. Well, I would also say, I really loved covering Valkyrie. Was a really interesting discussion, I thought.
Yeah. Interview with a Vampire was
really,
fun to
there's
cover.
a lot of richness there. I really loved talking about American Made. I loved the process of discovering American Made.
Definitely.
I just watched that film again last week.
Mhm.
When I was up late in the middle of the night with, hey, fans of The Last Star in Hollywood, can you guess the two movies that I watched when I was up late with COVID and could not sleep? That's right. I watched American Made and the Brad Bird movie Tomorrowland. Let me tell you. That's kind of an interesting, no one ever mentions it. And certainly it's never come up on this podcast. It's kind of an interesting one. I really did. 3 a.m. I was like, I cannot sleep. I feel wretched. My voice sounded a lot like this. I was just coughing constantly. I thought, you know what I need to watch? I need to watch George Clooney and Hugh Laurie just having a vision of the future, like a real debate about what human beings can do. That was awesome. Yeah. Most in need of a sequel. If you could magic a new film onto the upcoming slate for Tom Cruise, is there anything that you would like to see?
I know
Anything
we
that
already
isn't
said it,
completely
but I
tapped
think
out?
it would be Edge of Tomorrow. That was really cool and interesting. And I would want to see another one.
Huh.
Yeah. Especially with Emily Blunt.
I would love to see him work with Emily Blunt again. I think I want that partnership on screen more than I want a direct Edge of Tomorrow sequel.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I would really, this is such a weird thought. I would really love to see Cruise and Kidman on screen again.
Ooh, that is a weird thought.
Yeah, obviously, I
don't think
personal
I
lives would
would.
make that, really challenging.
I'll spare her that.
Yeah, maybe she deserves better than that right now. But, maybe a sequel to Eyes Wide Shut where we track what happened to that guy after all these years. Just do it in real time. That his marriage fell apart.
Naturally.
This constant pursuit of something that he just could not internalize, could not realize, even if it were handed to him.
Yeah.
I think that that's really interesting. And I think that what that film has to say about class, what that film has to say about the invisible lines which divide our society is perhaps more relevant in 2024 than it was in 1999. I'd be interested in seeing what happens to that guy. What is he willing to do now that he's almost had a taste of what he could have?
Yeah.
And I think there's maybe something interesting there. But it wouldn't be happy fun times, that's for sure.
No.
Similar. I feel that way about a lot of Tom Cruise protagonists because I feel like you can go back into his filmography and almost none of those guys are doing well 20 years after the movie. Like maybe Jerry, right? Like maybe Jerry Maguire's actually happy. We could get Zellweger back.
Good.
We could get Lipnicki back, right? He could come back.
Wow. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That'd be something.
That would be something. I would watch that for sure.
There's no way that you would. If they're going to continue to make Bridget Jones movies against all public advice.
Oh my God. Yes.
all wisdom. They're going to continue to make those. They should at least make another Jerry Maguire.
I agree. That would be fun.
Let's talk about the most overhyped Tom Cruise movie. What is the movie with the least deserved reputation? What is the movie that everyone talks about that just doesn't deserve its place in the conversation for people who really want to take Tom Cruise seriously? Is there anything that really stands out?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's got to be this most recent Mission Impossible. What was it? Edge of Tomorrow? Was it the most recent?
No, Dead Reckoning. Edge of Tomorrow is the one you like. Edge of Tomorrow is the Groundhog Day with Emily Blunt.
Oh, sorry.
They're all blurring together. Dead Reckoning, really? I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, well, because it was like 3 years of it's coming, and we're pushing it off, and we're changing it, we're this, and I saw so many different previews and trailers and things for it, and Haley Atwell talking about it, and then I finally saw it, and I was like, this is dumb. So I think that's the one for me.
Dumb. Yeah. It's not objectionable. For me, I really have to go back. I think that when Tom Cruise dies, the first movie listed in his obituary might well be Risky Business, and that sucks because that film's not good, and he's not good in it.
Yeah,
I understand that it defined him at a very crucial period of his career, but it really was like 5 minutes. You know, it defined what he was doing for 3 films.
So strange.
And then it went away, and good, because it should go away.
Yeah.
That film, fundamentally doesn't work
at all.
I think, and kind of, as we talked about, you know, kind of has a bad heart and should have been a dream. As you established very firmly in that episode of The Last Star in Hollywood, there's no reason Risky Business isn't a dream. Why isn't it a dream? Maybe that's the sequel that we need, is when he just sits bolt upright in bed. It's just all of Risky Business with a new epilogue of 65-year-old Tom Cruise suddenly sitting straight up in bed, realizing that the whole thing had been a dream. That movie goes up 10 places on our list if that happens. And much more interestingly, and our last superlative award, what is the most overlooked movie? What is the
American
Tom Cruise?
Made. I'm sorry, but it is. No, I didn't.
It absolutely is. American Made rules.
It's so good.
Extremely good, and nobody has seen that film.
Absolutely.
And I'm so thrilled to be able to do a little bit of...
And then I would also tack on Legend. I think everyone should watch Legend. So many people haven't. They're like, oh, yeah, I vaguely remember it from when I was a kid. I can't wait to watch it again. It's the season for it. And
Tim Curry is fantastic in that film, but does kind of take a little bit of the air out of the room as far as like discussion of that film. I feel like it gets wrapped up in the Tim Curry camp 80s experiment, like that phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And it maybe deserves... Yeah, you're right, to be distinguished. And I also think it kind of suffers alongside Labyrinth. I think that in the popular consciousness, Labyrinth gets a little bit more attention.
Yeah,
and it's not that Labyrinth isn't great. It's, you're right. Legend is
well, and when I watch it again,
and weird.
Yeah.
And we should have more special and weird.
I totally agree. When I watch it again, I'm going to watch that director's cut again.
Oh, really?
It was
interesting.
just so interesting, and there's just more, and I want more.
You should have. I think it's a
I wish I could
better
watch the director's cut with the Tangerine Dream soundtrack. That's what I want.
We determined that this does exist, though, right?
Did
Is that
we?
like the European release of the director's cut? Or it's not quite the director's cut, but it's almost there?
Yeah.
There's some weird release of Legend somewhere in like the 11 different releases of that film.
Yeah.
There is one that is an extended cut with the Tangerine Dream soundtrack.
That's what I want.
I love the Goldsmith score on that film, so I'm big into Goldsmith right now because we're about to talk about The Mummy over on the Patreon, the 1999 Stephen Sommers Mummy, which has a fantastic Goldsmith score.
Yeah, it does.
I absolutely love his work on that film. It's been really great delving back into that and really just enjoying the hell out of that film.
And that's a movie that holds up. Our boys loved it. 9 and 11, and they were just totally in. Yeah.
Fantastic movie. Yeah, really. And it's been reclaimed. Like, we're not telling anyone that, hey, you guys, the 1999 The Mummy, pretty good. Actually, Brendan Fraser, kind of charming on screen. Rachel Weisz, one of the world's most beautiful people.
Oh, absolutely.
It turns out everybody knows that movie's good.
Yeah.
But it turns out that movie's really good.
But
just fantastic. And so much better than the Cruise. It made me mad all over again at the dark universe and what a terribly conceived idea. I also, and I'll talk about this a little bit on the Mummy bonus episode, I also had the misfortune just this last week of seeing Jungle Cruise starring Emily Blunt and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, which is really, really ripping off the Mummy. Like just lifting entire sequences out of the Mummy and really taking the core dynamic. It's just, that is one of the worst films I've ever seen, despite the fact that Emily Blunt is still really good in it. I think she's bulletproof.
Unsinkable. Yep.
She doesn't always elevate the movies that she's in.
But she's always good in them.
Just always good, right?
Yeah, fair.
I'll have to really go through her filmography. You've been advising me to watch Quiet Place.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the lead up to Halloween here, as we've been really taking a haphazard approach to horror movies this year.
Yeah. I just
very
keep on going back.
About it.
Yes, because I'll watch some of them and be like, oh, that was cool, but now I want something very cozy.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing for me. Like, autumn rolls around and I don't think spooky, scary movies. I think
when the world is a horror movie,
right?
Maybe you can be forgiven for just watching Anne of Green Gables. I think that's perfectly fine. Or, Tomorrowland at 3 a.m. Either of those, equally valid approaches, really. Equally valid approaches.
Precisely.
That is going to do it for this episode of The Last Star in Hollywood. We will be back in May of next year. I can only guess. I can only speculate. I can only imagine that we'll be back in May of next year to talk about the as yet untitled Mission Impossible 8. And then, I don't know, probably every year after that until, one of us dies. You, me, or Tom Cruise. That's really going to be the only punctuation that is going to serve to end this podcast forever.
Wow.
That's a bleak note upon which to end.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this is how we sign off every week. I normally just record it after you left the studio. Do you have any closing thoughts here at the end of The Last Star in Hollywood?
No, I don't think so. Just that I am glad that we did it. I think overall it was such an interesting filmography. We got so many different directors. We got so many different decades. We got so many different stylized approaches. And I feel that I have a better understanding of American cinema for having done this podcast.
That's a really good point, I think, and a really worthwhile place upon which to end the podcast today, that Tom Cruise, for better or worse, really does track the movement of Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
Through 4 decades. Like he's really there and defining the shapes. He's rising and falling with Hollywood, but he's also, I think, forcing change in that creative industry, right? He's leading by example. That's, evident, I suppose, most of all with Mission Impossible, where that started, where it went, and then where it's ended up. I think that he's really given some shape to the industry as far as what we expect from action cinema, what we expect from stunt performances, what we expect from blockbuster movies.
Yeah.
And I have really enjoyed this project. I really enjoyed it. I think that, I'm never going to say that Tom Cruise is my favorite actor, but he is the last star in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And that's going to do it for this podcast. Thanks so much for listening, you guys. Thank you so much for your support. I hope you will join us over on the Patreon page for our discussion of The Mummy. That's patreon.com/nextword. And I hope that you will join us as we delve deep into Richard Linklater's Before trilogy in the forthcoming Don't You Know Me By Now, available very soon on your podcast app of choice. Elizabeth, it has been, as always, a pleasure.
It certainly has, darling. Thank you. I look forward to the next one.
And we hope that you guys at home will join us for the next one. We'll talk to you all again soon. Take care.